Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Staffing Matters and Urgency Committee. I'm Councillor Claire Douglas and I'm the chair of this committee. And so if we go straight through into the agenda, item number 1 is apologies for absence, and we have apologies from Councillor Corbane, and he is substituted by Councillor Lomas. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. Item number 2 is declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declarations of interest? No, there are none. So we'll move on to item number 3, which is exclusion of press and public. And this is to consider the exclusion of the press and public from the meeting during consideration of Annex A to Agenda Item 7, redundancy, pension and exit discretions expenditure. And that's on the grounds that it contains information relating to individuals and the financial affairs of particular persons. And that information is classed as exempt under paragraphs 1, 2 and 3 of Schedule 12A, Section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972. So my proposal is that if we want to discuss the detail of the information that is contained in Annex A, that we will go into private session, but if members don't feel the absolute need to discuss that fine detail, then we won't. So can I have an indication if anybody feels the need to go into private session? Okay, so we'll go back to it at that time, but I would rather avoid it if we possibly can and stay with the public. So thanks for that. Item number 4 then is the minutes of the last meeting. And can I see those in favour of the minutes being an accurate reflection of those? Thank you. So those are approved. And I will sign them at the end of this meeting. Item number 5 is public participation. We have no registered speakers today, so we will move on to item number 6, which is the workforce profile as at Q1 25-26. And Claire Wayne is here to introduce that paper to us. So please go ahead, Claire. Thank you.
Thank you. What you've got in front of you this evening is the workforce profile as of Q1. This is a report that you're familiar with. It's been coming to you for some time now and being tweaked and amended as we've gone along to reflect any requests that you've had in relation to the information. The information, as you know, is the City of York workforce profile that's available to all of the employees and managers in the council. The data you've got in front of you is if you have looked at anything prior to this, it's not vastly different. There's not huge variances in any of the detail in front of you. We haven't had any particular spikes at any point in any of the workforce profile data. Our turnover remains steady at 12%. We are keeping an eye on all of our work with York assignments, so the usual cost controls are in place, and we are scrutinising those placements so that we are keeping those under control. As you can see from point 9 from the table, everything is pretty much comparable between Q1 and 24-25. A few more levers in certain parts. You'll see when you get to paragraph 10, nothing's changed really there in terms of our age profile. We've got the age band 50 to 60 is highest workforce age band of the council, which we'll probably talk about later when we come on to the some of the pensions information later on. The only thing that's different on here for you is that we've got the retention payments paragraph in there now. So it used to be a separate report that you would have received previously, and that's now contained within this report. Sickness figures are pretty much as they were, so there's nothing major, I don't think, to report. Whether that's a good or bad thing, it's pretty stable for now. If you've got any questions, please fire away.
Thank you, Claire. Thanks very much. Does anybody have anything that they would like to ask Claire about or raise Councillor Eyre, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just a very quick one, and obviously it's snapshots and you never know, and it's in terms of trends, but page 23 in terms of resignations.
Yeah.
The one area where we do seem to have currently seen quite a big shift is the number of 25 to 34s who are leaving. So we were around about 21% of the total last year. That's gone up to 37%, which at the moment says that we're losing a lot more 25 to 34. Appreciate a trend is only a trend when it goes on for a long period of time, but just that did sort of stick out.
Yeah, there's some work we're doing at the moment in terms of looking at the exit interviews and trying to get under the skin of that really, and before we get to that point when people are saying actually I'm going to go or I'm about to resign, why that is. So we will be doing some work on that to see what we can find out, if there's a particular reason why, or it's just something that's happening now that's just happens to be in that age group.
So I wonder if that's cost structure. If that's cost, because 50 to 64s have gone down from 35 to 20%. So it seems like when it comes to those sort of resignations, we're losing that younger cohort.
Yeah,
and the older cohort are choosing to stay a bit longer, probably to trigger their pension.
There'll be all sorts of reasons for that, and it'll be all sorts of reasons in terms of particular areas. So there will be areas of turbulence with change that people might say, actually, there might be a role somewhere else for me. That leavers bit is also, some of those are within the council. So some of that will be movement, because they'll show us leavers even if they retain within the council. So there will be a little bit of that won't exactly tell you where they've gone to. But we're certainly doing some work on exit interviews to understand that in more detail.
Thank you for that, Claire. And if I could just ask you about the fact that on table 1.3, which is on page 19, about sickness days per FTE, that adult social care and integration, and also transport and environment directorate can continue to be fairly stubbornly above the average. Is there anything particular that's being done in those directorates around sickness and trying to bring those down? They've been above the average for a number of years now, haven't they? So this isn't a new problem, but it's something we all need to keep an eye on.
And we will continue to do that direct work with managers. From my specific area, which is adult social care, and there is significant amount of work going on with those managers. We've had a significant amount of change in those areas too. I'll be expecting those to come down a little bit. It might come the next time when you get those figures. There's been a lot of long-term sickness cases which have been really tricky, and ill health retirements that should show some of those figures come down, particularly in adults. So I think that will show. But they have fluctuated. We had a real dip. Now that social care has gone back up again a little bit. But yes, the work is happening with managers in terms of that direct coaching with them.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor.
Just an interesting point on that is I suspect, and I may be entirely wrong, but those are two different types of long-term sick. Obviously, within transport, we know there's a lot of manual handling, which causes physical injuries. I'm guessing in adult social care that may well be more towards difficult jobs, stress, mental health, etc. Do we have the capacity across the work we're doing to deal with both those sort of physical drivers and those mental health drivers as well?
Yeah, we should absolutely be able to do that hand in hand with some of the work with what will come, I think, in time will be the link up of occupational health and the direct occupational health referrals. So that system changed not that long ago to show the changes through. So when people will dial Medigold to say they're unwell, the referrals go more quickly. So through to counselling and through to physio. So I think it will it's a slow burn, I think, in terms of watching those figures come down. We're not going to see anything dramatically different. Got an ageing workforce, and both of those directorates, that ageing workforce will sit in both of those. So as much as I've been doing this job for a long, long time, and I'd love to say that we've worked so very hard and we've dropped those figures, but I think some of those things we'll just have to live with the fact that that's the type of illness we have in there, and we keep people as well as we can in the workplace to avoid them going off.
Thank you very much for that, Claire. Anybody else on this? No. Okay, great. Right, so in that case then we have the recommendations are on page 14. I'm going back up my document here. And the recommendations say At paragraph 21, Staffing Matters and Urgency Committee is asked to note the workforce profile provided in Annex A that we've just been discussing. And so can I see those in favour of noting that workforce profile? Thank you. That's approved unanimously. Thank you. The next item then is item number 7, which is the redundancy, pension and exit discretions expenditure. And so, Claire, if you would like to introduce this to us, and then we'll have a stop and see if we're going to need to go into private session. Thank you.
Thank you. So the report that you've got in front of you is a different format, I think, than you've been used to. Is this the first time you've seen it in this format in terms of the detail? So if you you will see the covering period from September 24 to now, August 20, 1st September, isn't it? To yesterday. So we've got the 12 months in front of you in terms of the information that you've already seen. So everything that's greyed out on there you have seen and noted in the past. If you go to the bottom of that page, you will see from 15 through to 19 on that table. Those are the ones for noting today. You will see that there's been a couple of flexible retirements in there. And then there are 3 redundancy payments on here, no discretions on there. Going back to the previous item, we talked about our ageing workforce or our workforce profile. You'll see that there's some pretty high costs on those particular redundancies. For that very reason, we've got a workforce that are costly when we do need to unfortunately end up in that situation where posts are redundant. So those costs at the bottom, you've got 2 that's relatively high in relation to this pension and redundancy costs. And you'll see that this is identified as directorates at this stage rather than the business cases that you would have had prior to that.
Okay, thank you for that. And just for everybody's information that may see this, what we're looking at is the cost of redundancy and the pension cost, both of which are absolutely within contractual payments on the redundancy, and there are no discretionary payments at all on any of them.
Standard redundancy costs attributed to those individuals.
Okay, thank you for that. So can I just ask members, do you want to discuss that in any further detail? Do we need to go into private session? Well, you know, if you want to talk about specific numbers or directorates, etc., then we need to go into private session. Okay, all right. So please go ahead and ask a question then, Councillor.
I think it was sort of the general point. I think we discussed this before, that we did used to get the business cases. I think when we're dealing with numbers of this size, I think it's helpful in terms of providing an overview to actually have that, because we're not 100% certain. I've only got face value from officers that was actually a financially viable decision, or the other options were not such significant. So I do prefer to see that. I think it's very difficult. That's why I don't want to discuss the figures. But we are, as you said, I was trying to write down what you said, so I can copy that. Significant high costs in terms of those. And while yes, they are mandatory, the decision to make those people redundant is not mandatory. That's a decision the council makes, I think. So that's my first point, is that I think when we're dealing with such significant costs, there should be greater transparency, both to members and to members of the public. And then my second thing is, and I've discussed this with Debbie Mitchell in terms of the exec papers as well, is there is no finances in this particular report in terms of that. So there are occasions, I understand from the 151 officer, whereby probably on smaller scale redundancies, that's met within existing budgets, and that's part of the savings profile. Is there's a savings target, which is you reduce staffing. That in itself, the redundancy costs are covered by the savings that you make within budgets. There are other times when we actually use different pots of funding for more significant redundancy costs. Nothing in here tells us as a committee or members of the public whether that's actually been met from departmental savings. I suspect this one probably hasn't. I suspect these costs will have to come from a wider central reserve, and what the financial implications are for that, because obviously whatever that financial reserve is that we're using is not infinite. So that's part of the decisions that we should probably be looking at as a committee, is saying actually where's that money coming from? If that's coming from a one-off pot, how much of that pot is left? What are the potential chances in terms of restructures going forward and potential draw on that particular account again going forward? So that hopefully didn't stray into anything that was confidential.
Claire, do you want to come back on any of that?
It'd be helpful
please?
if
Thank
that's
you.
okay.
Yeah.
I totally understand that lack of information in this particular information that you've got. I suppose for this is the last thing we want to be doing as an authority, which is losing roles and making redundancies. So this, where it comes from, I suppose it's important to understand where that comes from, but we're legally obliged to pay that, and the significant part of that figure. I say it's significant in that when you look at the rest of the table, it's higher than you've seen for a while. But the majority of that will be pension strain, which will be yes, the reports to authorise and prove that through section 151 will go through how that's to be met and how long it will take to pay for that pension costs. We're kind of we have to do it by law. So I think there's probably another conversation about where the pots of money come from, but ultimately, as an authority, we're legally bound to pay it. I don't think that will necessarily come through the business case in terms of the approval, but you're right. The whole point is around making those savings within the departments would be the ideal scenario. Sometimes you can't foresee where that's going to be in the end, and which individuals will fall out of that. I can tell you now that every opportunity was taken to mitigate those redundancies, because that was the last thing we were trying to get to. And we did, for a number of those people, without identifying them. You know, we did manage to mitigate a significant number of those that don't appear on here because they've stayed in the authority. But I wonder whether that's something else we can look at for members around the pots of money. But I think it would probably be outside of the HR report for you, because this is more for noting than anything else than approval.
Councillor Lomas.
Yeah, thank you for this. It is helpful, and as you say, nobody wants to be in a position to be losing members of staff and losing all that they've brought to the council. Some of them over a long period of time.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's worth noting that while we shouldn't be looking at individual business cases, because they often contain a level of detail about people's personal circumstances that really shouldn't be visible to us as members. We need to respect people's privacy and confidentiality. But I also think it's worth noting that there is a wider context to this, and that is organisation-wide transformation that's happening within the authority, and that where that happens and where we have budget cuts that have been made and where we look to deliver services differently, then that can result in people's posts becoming redundant, and that's a first step, is a post becomes redundant, and the next step is looking to see if you can redeploy that person, and give them an alternative post. And I think that's helpful to just detail, is that this isn't the council making redundancies. This is us changing the way the council operates for very good reason. And then, unfortunately, for some people, there won't be another post for them to go into, and that's when redundancy happens. And it's helpfully outlined in the paper, in the background section, that redundancy occurs in legal terms. That's when those tests are met, then redundancy occurs, and we have no choice but to pay people's contractual redundancy payments. And I think it's also worth noting that when we talk about pension strain costs, that's money that's paid into somebody's pension, to mitigate the impact on particularly older workers who are made redundant, and to make sure that they don't lose from their pension pot. That money does not go directly to a person. that goes into their pension, and it will indirectly be paid to them at the point which they draw their pension, but it's not a, you know, big kind of payment that's given to someone. And I think that's something that's often missed when we talk about redundancy and we talk about, you know, the different types of payments. And the important thing for me is the clarification that you made, that there've been no discretionary payments made, that everything is contractual statutory payments that have been made. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to draw everybody's attention to paragraphs 4 and 5 on page 2930, that is where it outlines the process that has been gone through. And the report is really quite helpful in understanding the process and also the payments that are due. And I would like to thank those people who have gone through this process and have left the organisation due to reorganisation, and them not finding other positions to be assimilated into, which is disappointing, but does happen. I would like to thank them for their service to the council. It's hugely important. Right, anybody for anything else on this one? No, thank you. And thanks for the information that's in the report. I think that's really helpful. It's easier to understand now what are the contractual payments and what are discretionary. And there are no discretionary, so that's very good news. All contractual payments, and thanks for that. So the recommendations for this one are on page 12. Have I got that right?
Section 12.
Okay, of the page that was going to say, I didn't think it was page 12. I must have been thinking about yeah, something else. Paragraph 12 on page 31. It says Staffing Matters and Urgency Committee is asked to note the expenditure in cases that have been approved. Can I see those in favour of that noting? Thank you. That's unanimously noted. And then finally, we move on to item number 8, which is the work plan. And so that is on page 35. And in our next meeting's on the 24th of November. And so at this point in time, we have the regular reports that we've just had a look at. Actually, we'll come to that meeting unless there is any other business that's notified before then. So is everybody okay with that work plan as it stands? In favour? Yes. Approved. Thank you. Work plan approved. And then going back to the agenda, we have item number 9, which is urgent business, and I have no urgent business. So that is the end of the meeting, and thank you everybody, and thanks to those who have attended online. And there we go. See you next time.